September is Suicide Prevention Month, and a lot of folks are reaching out to loved ones, sharing the hotline, all great things. But I do wonder when we talk about this if conventional medicine may be missing the mark when it comes to addressing suicide because they're not looking at the root cause. Hey, it's Dr. Holly here. Welcome. September is Suicide Prevention Month. As a lot of you guys know, I have been with the VA for over a decade, and the VA really does a pretty good job, I think, for what it can do when it comes to suicide prevention in our veterans. The last time I looked at the statistics, it's about 20 veterans a day are committing suicide. Over half of those aren't seen at the VA. So really, when it comes to veteran suicide, when it comes to all the suicides, all of us really play a part. And when the VA looks at it, and when a lot of my conventional medicine colleagues look at it, they look a lot at prevention. They look at means prevention specifically. So looking at maybe having a pause before someone can buy a gun, because if they are buying a gun with the intention of killing themselves, having maybe a 24-hour waiting period or that background check or whatever it may be that causes that pause may be enough to have them think twice or three times or whatever it may be so they can reach out for some help. Locking up guns is something we talk about a lot with our vets, and I talk about with folks that I see if they have guns at home. I do that mainly for safety within family, but also if they're having a hard time. If you have your gun locked up, if you have a gun lock on your gun, again, that's going to create that period of time to have a pause between that, what sometimes can be a somewhat spontaneous act due to the extreme pain in the moment and feeling like there's no way out. You see that in San Francisco. They've started creating a netting underneath the bridge, which had a high statistics of suicide. Folks who survived suicide attempts on the bridge talk about thoughts of remorse while falling and having that pause that maybe they didn't have before jumping. So having that netting is a deterrent. Folks say, well, if you're deterring one way, they're going to find another way. Not always. The research finds that if you deter someone in their intended mode of suicide, it can create enough pause for them to perhaps rethink that plan, not necessarily in a way to do it in a different means, but in a way to maybe reach out for help and engage in treatment that might help them along the way and keep them from taking their own life. So suicide in the moment, we have those prevention means. We're working on that actively. There's a lot of research on that. I wonder, as an integrative psychiatrist, about looking a few steps before that at prevention due to root causes of what's happening in the brain. I do a lot of work with brain health. I'm blessed to work with veterans at the Tulane Center for Brain Health, a lot of both veterans and players with traumatic brain injuries. And so looking at how the brain works and how we can help it heal is a passion of mine that stems from my dad having ALS and passing away from that. So these kind of inquisitions are things that my brain starts thinking about and looking into. So looking at the root cause from more of an integrative perspective, we need to consider the fact that the brain is about 60% fat. So they have actually looked at folks' fat consumption by looking at their level of cholesterol in their blood. And believe it or not, though we like to lower our cholesterol for our cardiovascular disease, if we lower it too much, it can actually affect our brain health. We see this in folks that come see me for TBI who are on medications for cholesterol, the statins, and have some cognitive blurring. So that's something we have to keep in mind. Yes, we want to lower it for brain health, but for heart health, but we want to not lower it too much because our brain is 60% fat. It's been found that folks who have more lethal means of suicide or suicide attempts have super low cholesterols. I can't say this is like every single person, but it seems to be a factor. So again, something to consider. Looking at your diet, Non-fat is not necessarily better for your entire whole body health, including your brain. I really encourage folks to consider things like omega-3s because our diets are pretty full in America of omega-6s. We want that nice balance of those types of good fats so that our brain can function well and make the neurotransmitters and have all the things happening in our mitochondria to have the energy to keep going and to help our mood and our outcome and our life. So fats, that's one thing to consider. Another thing is vitamin D. Vitamin D has gotten a lot of press because of the pandemic. Part of why vitamin D is super helpful for something like avoiding a virus is because vitamin D decreases the inflammatory cytokines. So those are the chemicals that can basically create that inflammatory response, which can be good, but when it goes too far, can create things like chronic pain, diabetes, blood pressure, heart issues, all the things. So vitamin D, it's been found that if your vitamin D is below 15, you are 50% more likely to try to commit suicide. So that's worth considering, right? Vitamin D is something we get from being in natural light. It's also something we get through our diet. So that's something to consider not only for avoidance of pandemic, but also for your brain health. Along with that kind of inflammatory response that the vitamin D is connected to, and there might be other reasons the vitamin D is playing a role that we just haven't figured out yet. With inflammation, for those, there was a study done, it was an 8 to 9 year study. It was looking at folks with high levels of inflammation. So folks with chronic illness, all the different types. I listed a few, but really, you name it, usually there's inflammation behind it. So the folks who were in that highest group, the highest amount of inflammation, were actually 4 times as likely to try to commit suicide. So again, inflammation plays a role. We already know that it's something that plays a role in our pain, which is also thought to be a suicide risk, plays a role in our heart disease, plays a role in all the things. So another reason for us to be considering this and looking at our diet, looking at our lifestyle, and trying to decrease that level of inflammation using multiple ways. There's multiple ways to do this. Unfortunately, there's not one magic pill, but you have the power without the pills to do the things. Along with the inflammation, I mentioned that I work with folks with traumatic brain injury. It's a passion of mine, both veterans and non-veterans. For folks who have traumatic brain injury, some studies, it's 2 to 3 times as likely to have suicidal behaviors and potentially die due to suicide. So that is something also worth considering. And that's why folks with traumatic brain injury, I love working with them and trying to help them decrease that inflammation, improve their brain health, and flip the script on where things are going for them, because oftentimes it's a place of hopelessness, because doing that and addressing it from all the different angles can decrease their likelihood of dying by suicide. Other factors that folks may be more familiar with are things like sleep. We've all probably had issues with sleep in the past year or two due to what's been going on both politically and with the pandemic and with all the changes that have happened in our lives. And some acute sleep issues due to stress are unfortunately part of life, but there are ways to address those with sleep hygiene and with things like adaptogens, which is a different video. But having more of a chronic insomnia is something that can contribute to dying by suicide due to just, it kind of increases all the things we're talking about, increases inflammation, decreases clear thinking, and just makes the risk higher. So that's something to definitely consider when we're looking at our sleep and our sleep hygiene. Trauma is something that having a history of trauma can increase the chances of dying by suicide. This is for a number of reasons. We've looked at childhood trauma And when we actually give scores to this, it's these ACEs scores that my folks in the developmental world are more familiar with. But basically, what we do is we look at the amount of trauma someone's has had in their lives of various types, from childhood through adulthood. And unfortunately, the more trauma experiences you've had, the higher likelihood of having these inflammatory processes, such as diabetes, heart issues, stroke, chronic pain, all the things, and suicides also increased. It's kind of chicken and the egg as far as what's causing what, but something worth addressing, something worth looking at. If you are someone who has experienced trauma, please reach out to someone like myself, who has a trauma-informed practice, who can help you work through that and help you address it in whatever way you're comfortable with, because there's not just one way to do it. So as a trauma survivor, you are allowed to be in the driver's seat, and you are allowed to determine your care in a way that's beneficial to you, to keep you safe and to keep you alive and on this earth, because you are valuable. So prevention. Let's limit means, which we've already been talking about. Let's reach out to those that we love and make sure they know that we love them and be present for them. But then also let's look at our diet. Let's look at our exercise. Let's look at our lifestyle, and not forget that those things also play a part in the root cause of developing thoughts of suicide and, unfortunately, ending one's life due to suicide. With that, I just want to make sure you know that there are folks available to you 24/7. If you're here in New Orleans, they have hotlines through NOLA Ready that are willing to talk to you about the recent trauma that we've all experienced as a community. And that is a trauma. That is something worth holding space for and giving yourself space to work through. There's also the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. It's, I want to make sure I don't forget, it's 1-800-273-8255. You can also text GO, G-O, to 741-741. That's 24/7. And that's a trained counselor who can talk you through whatever you're going through. Maybe you're not quite suicidal, but you're feeling pretty hopeless and lonely. You can still reach out. You don't need to reach that point of having your plan and getting ready to pursue it to reach out. Reach out as soon as you think it might be a possibility and get some help. Know that we're here for you. Know that we love you. I adore you. If you want to reach out to me, at darawellnessnola.com. You can get a free discovery call there on my website. Please follow and like me on whatever part of social media you're seeing this. Follow me on YouTube so you can be alerted to these videos, and just know I'm sending lots of blessings and love to you, and that you are important, and that we do love you, and we do want you on this earth. So please, please, please reach out if you need help.